Hey everybody, my name is Ben Schreff and I am the curator and head Niwashi or gardener here at RoHoEn, also known as the Japanese Friendship Garden here in Phoenix, Arizona. As a gardener in a Japanese garden, we have a lot of different responsibilities. One of our responsibilities that takes probably the most time to learn is pine pruning. In Japan, they say it takes 15 years to become a good pine pruner, and so it takes a lot of training, a lot of hours in the trees, a lot of mistakes, a lot of oral traditions being passed down from our teachers. And so when we prune pines, it's not only for the aesthetics, it's also for the horticulture of the tree and for the betterment of the health of the tree long term. One of the things that we try to achieve is controlling the size of the tree. If these pines were left or allowed to grow unchecked, they would reach, 80 feet in height or something like that eventually. These trees, for the age that they are, if they had been left to grow, they'd probably be 40 or 50 feet by now, but as you can see, they're only 10 or 12 feet, some of them. And that's through the pruning process that we control the size. Pines have a really elegant branch structure and shape, and so we want to expose that when we prune the pines. Another thing that my teacher taught me, that his teacher taught him, that's a good way of thinking about how thin we want the trees, is that when we're done pruning the pine, we want to be able to look through the pine and see a bird that's sitting on the other side of the tree. Now, we want to be able to see the branch structure, and as you can see behind me, you can see the elegant curve of the trunk as well as the shape of the branches that are moving laterally off of the trunk. When we prune pines, we're removing branches in the tree that are genetically predisposed to, for instance, go straight vertically or straight down off of the branches, because it interrupts the profile that we're trying to see of the tree. When we get separation between the branches, for instance, the way that we achieve that is by removing vertical and downward facing branches. And by doing so, we're leaving the lateral branches, which help to create the shape that we want to see of the tree. So the other thing I'm going to talk about a little bit is just what we wear in the garden. These are called teiko, and I wear these around my wrists. And they have a lot of different uses, really. So this can protect one's lower arms from the needles. It also does a pretty good job of keeping dirt, insects out of your sleeve. There's a lot of sap that comes out of these trees when we're pruning them sometimes, and so it's also just protection from that. And these are called jikatabi. It's your big toe, and then the rest of your toes are on this side of the shoe or boot. These are a clasp system. We're constantly in the dirt. We're also walking on the plants, and these have a softer sole on the bottom, so it doesn't tear up ground covers, or in Japan it would be moss. This tree is probably the only one in the garden, or one of just a few, that I don't have to climb at all. But for climbing trees, this is a much better choice than a boot or a shoe. So it doesn't tear up the bark as much as a boot or a shoe, and I'm just a lot more nimble in this footwear than I am in a clunky boot or shoe. The tool that we use for pine pruning, this is called hasami, or this would be a snip, or pruners would be the translation. So these are a high quality, Japanese steel, and the way that we prune is we keep one finger above this area here, and that helps with control, and then we open it back up easily this way as well. We need something like this because we want to be able to make very fine cuts, so we can cut it flush with the branch. These are also really sharp and quite strong, so you can cut through even 3/4 or even an inch maybe with these on something like a pine that's a little bit softer. And then I also carry a pruning saw for large branches. The other reason that we hold it like this is that
we don't want to have to put our snips, our Hasami, back in our sheath every time that we want to pull needles. So if I'm pulling needles, I want to be able to use this hand to either hold the branch so that I can pull with my other hand, or potentially vice versa. So I'm reaching through this to be able to pull the needles without having to put this in my sheath every time, pull some needles, pull it out, make a cut. We're often doing the same things concurrently, and so I want to save that time and be able to pull the needles with this hand as well.
Here at the Japanese Friendship Garden of Phoenix, the type of pine that we use is called an Aleppo pine, or Pinus halepensis, and it's one of just a couple, 3 pines that survive and really thrive here in our desert climate. We do our heaviest pruning in the fall or even early winter. In the early spring, we'll do another form of pruning that's called candling, in which we will remove a lot of the new growth that's just emerging before it's even fully opened up, in an effort to somewhat control the size of the tree, but also to potentially create more buds on the interior of the tree, so that we can have a green pad that goes all the way back towards or close to the trunk. So when we're pruning the pines, we always want to start at the very top of the tree and in the center, and then work our way out and down for a couple of different reasons. So as we prune, we're of course dropping branches the whole way, dropping needles as we're pulling needles. And we want to, when we're done with the tree, we want to have a clean tree. So obviously if we worked in the other direction, we would be dropping stuff onto the areas that we've already pruned and ideally groomed as we went as well. And then the other reason is, generally we want the bottom of the tree to be wider than the top of the tree, and if we don't cut the head or the upper branches of the tree enough, then it can make it difficult, if we don't have the branches available down below, to have a wider base to the tree. So some basic rules are, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but we're going to remove most of the strictly vertical growth, which we call tachi eda. Eda is branch, tachi is vertical or standing. And then we're going to remove at least most of the ue edas as well, which are the downward facing branches. We don't want overlapping branches either. We will leave tachi eda and ue eda in places where we have nothing else, but what's preferable is lateral branching. And as we can, we want to remove the thicker, coarser branches in favor of thinner branches, which make the tree and the pad more sustainable in the long term. So something like this is laying on top of branches which may not have been here last year. So this is something that we can at least greatly reduce, if not totally. It looks like we'll probably be able to totally remove it, but I'm at least going to cut way back on the branch. So if I was just pruning this branch, I'd maybe remove the tachi edas and perhaps shorten these. However, this is not needed at all anymore. So I'm going to cut all the way back to this lateral for now, and depending on what I find underneath, I may get rid of this as well, but that's a good start. The other thing that we do when we're pruning in the fall is we're going to pull the old needles on the tree. And so in this case, 3-year-old needles, they're pretty much done photosynthesizing, the oldest ones, and they're just going to continue to turn brown and fall off. So while we're here pruning and cleaning up the tree, we're going to remove the old needles as well. It also helps to help the Niwashi or the gardener to see what we're working with here. Aleppo pines particularly produce a massive amount of growth every year, and so it can be really difficult to even see what's what. And by pulling some of the old needles, then we can start to see what we're dealing with and then remove or reduce branches accordingly. We're going to thin out. What we want to do is cut to 2 buds when we can. We want to remove long straight branches because they're not as interesting,
and we want to get some movement in the branches here as we're filling in our pad. Another reason we remove the vertical branches or tachieda is because they are genetically going to continue to grow vertical. Even if we shorten them, we're going to get vertical growth that's going to come off of that branch that we shortened, and then we'll just be fighting those genetics for the life of the tree. So where we can, we always remove the tachieda. If there's nothing else there, we'll keep it until we're able to either develop new lateral buds just beneath it, or shorten it so that it doesn't stand out from the profile quite so much. So another technique we sometimes use on a branch like, say, this, which this may not get kept at all, but for the purpose of the demonstration, we will sometimes use something called a tochikiri, which means that I'm going to shorten this branch. If I had a lateral branch coming off of here, I would cut to that lateral, but I don't have one here. But this is way too long, and it's flopping on top of the growth that's down beneath it. So what I'm going to do is shorten this branch, and if it's not too old of a branch, then it should produce lateral buds around the area that I cut. I'll also use this opportunity to show the difference in a pruning style. So if I were to, say, cut this branch right here like so, I'm going to get a whole bunch of cut needles that are going to turn brown here in a few days and be unsightly. So when we do tochikiri, we're going to turn our shears, our snips, or hasami as we call them, at an angle and go in between the needles so that when I cut them, I'm not cutting any needles and so here I'm going to cut to 2. I'm going to pull some of these old needles, and what we're doing is just thinning out the stuff on the tree. This is a vertical growing branch. We're going to get rid of it. We can cut to the 2 here.